Welcome back to Horror Vault channel. In this video, today I will tell you 5 true and significant horror stories related to US presidential elections, reflecting moments of fear, violence, and chaos across the nation and around the world. I would highly recommend you to subscribe to Horror Vault if you want to continue watching our unique true horror stories from around the globe. So, without any delay, let's start with our first US presidential horror story. Story 1. January 6, 2021 Capitol Insurrection. The January 6, 2021 Capitol Insurrection was a violent and unprecedented attack on the U.S. Capitol by supporters of then-President Donald Trump. It aimed to disrupt the certification of Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. Below is a detailed account of the events and their aftermath. The events of January 6, 2021. Trump's speech and rally. On the morning of January 6, Trump addressed a crowd near the White House during a rally called the Save America March. He repeated baseless claims of election fraud and urged his supporters to fight like hell and march to the Capitol to pressure Congress to overturn the election results. Initial breach. By 12:53 p.m., even before Trump finished his speech, rioters began clashing with police at the Capitol's west perimeter. By 2:13 p.m., they breached the building by smashing windows and forcing doors open. Violence inside the Capitol. Rioters vandalized offices, looted property, and searched for lawmakers, chanting threats against Vice President Mike Pence and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Some were within 100 feet of Pence before he was evacuated by Secret Service agents. Law enforcement response. Capitol Police were overwhelmed as rioters used weapons like flagpoles and chemical sprays. Officer Eugene Goodman heroically diverted rioters away from the Senate chamber, potentially saving lives. Fatalities and injuries. 4 rioters died that day. 1 was shot by police while attempting to breach a barricaded area, and 3 others succumbed to medical emergencies. The following day, Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died after suffering strokes, attributed to injuries sustained during the riot. Over 140 police officers were injured. Aftermath. Political repercussions. Trump was impeached by the House for incitement of insurrection, making him the only U.S. president impeached twice. However, he was acquitted in the Senate trial. Criminal investigations. The FBI launched its largest investigation in history, leading to over 1,600 arrests by early 2025. Charges range from trespassing to seditious conspiracy. Impact on democracy. The attack exposed deep political divisions in America. A bipartisan congressional committee investigated Trump's role in inciting the violence, concluding that he engaged in a multi-part conspiracy to overturn the election. Pardons in 2025. Upon regaining office in January 2025, Trump issued sweeping pardons for over 1,500 individuals convicted or charged for their roles in the attack, including prominent far-right leaders. This decision sparked widespread criticism for undermining accountability. Significance. The January 6th insurrection remains a defining moment in modern U.S. history. It highlighted vulnerabilities in democratic institutions and raised concerns about political extremism and misinformation's impact on public trust in elections. It continues to shape political discourse and legal proceedings today. Story 2. Threats against election workers. Threats against election workers in the United States have escalated dramatically since the 2020 presidential election, fueled by conspiracy theories and political polarization. Here are key insights into this alarming trend. Scale of threats. A 2024 Brennan Center for Justice survey reported that 38% of local election officials experience threats, harassment, or abuse due to their roles, an increase from 30% in 2023. The Department of Justice's Election Threats Task Force has received over 2,000 reports of threats since its creation in 2021. But only a small fraction have led to prosecutions due to legal challenges surrounding free speech. Nature of threats. Election workers have faced death threats, harassment, and even physical attacks. For example, in Philadelphia, an individual threatened to torture and murder a party official overseeing poll watcher recruitment. In Arizona, gunfire targeted a Democratic campaign office, and a fire destroyed ballots in a Democratic-leaning area. Some election workers have had their personal information exposed online, a practice known as doxing, leading to stalking and intimidation. Impact on election workers. The hostile environment has caused significant turnover in the profession. Nearly 1/4 of election officials know colleagues who have left their positions due to safety concerns. Many officials now operate under heightened security measures, including bulletproof glass, panic buttons, and de-escalation training. Some workers have reported incidents like poisoning of pets or being forced to abandon their homes due to threats. Broader implications. The rise in threats undermines trust in the electoral process and discourages civic participation. It also creates challenges in recruiting and retaining qualified election workers. Counties that are focal points of disinformation campaigns, such as Maricopa County in Arizona and Fulton County in Georgia, have seen particularly high levels of hostility. Law enforcement and security measures. Federal agencies like the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are working with local governments to address these threats. However, many incidents remain unreported or unresolved due to resource constraints and legal hurdles. Despite increased security efforts, such as surveillance cameras and armed personnel at polling sites, election workers continue to face significant risks as political tensions remain high. The continued targeting of election workers poses a serious threat to democratic institutions and highlights the urgent need for systemic reforms to ensure their safety and protect the integrity of U.S. elections. Story 3. The COVID-19 Election Challenges. The 2020 U.S. presidential election faced unprecedented challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which significantly impacted how the election was conducted and perceived. Below are key aspects of these challenges. Shift to mail-in and early voting. To minimize the risk of spreading COVID-19, many states expanded mail-in voting and early voting options. Approximately 46% of voters cast their ballots by mail, a significant increase from previous elections. The rapid shift required states to adapt their infrastructure, leading to logistical hurdles such as delays in mailing ballots, shortages of poll workers, and the need for additional ballot drop boxes. These changes became a focal point for political controversy, with then President Donald Trump repeatedly claiming, without evidence, that mail-in voting was prone to fraud. Health risks at polling places. In-person voting during the primaries and general election posed health risks for voters and poll workers. Long lines formed due to reduced polling locations and social distancing measures, particularly in states with limited early voting options. Some voters waited hours in line, risking exposure to COVID-19 to exercise their right to vote. Poll workers, many of whom were older and more vulnerable to the virus, faced significant health risks. Legal battles over voting rules. The pandemic led to a wave of lawsuits over voting procedures. Courts were asked to rule on issues such as extended deadlines for mail-in ballots, the use of ballot drop boxes, and signature verification requirements. In some states, last-minute changes created confusion among voters and election officials alike. Misinformation and distrust. The expansion of mail-in voting became a target for misinformation campaigns. False claims about widespread voter fraud eroded public trust in the electoral process. These claims were amplified by political leaders and social media platforms, leading to heightened polarization and skepticism about the election's legitimacy. Record voter turnout despite challenges. Despite the obstacles, voter turnout in the 2020 election was the highest in over a century, with over 159 million Americans casting ballots. The resilience of voters and election officials demonstrated the strength of democratic institutions under extraordinary circumstances. Post-election fallout. The pandemic-related adaptations became a central issue in post-election disputes. Trump's legal team filed dozens of lawsuits challenging the results in key battleground states, often focusing on mail-in ballots. However, these challenges were overwhelmingly rejected by courts due to lack of evidence. The misinformation surrounding mail-in voting and claims of fraud culminated in events like the January 6th Capitol insurrection. The COVID-19 pandemic fundamentally reshaped how elections are conducted in the United States. While it highlighted the adaptability of election systems under pressure, it also exposed vulnerabilities that continue to influence debates about voting rights and election security. Story 4. Assassination attempts during the 2024 election cycle. During the 2024 U.S. presidential election cycle, there were multiple assassination attempts targeting former President Donald Trump, who was a Republican nominee. These incidents highlighted the heightened political tensions and security risks surrounding the election. Here are the key details. July 13, 2024, Pennsylvania rally shooting. During a campaign rally near Butler, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump was shot and sustained a minor injury to his right ear. The assailant, identified as 35-year-old Joseph Crooks, fired from a rooftop near the rally venue. The attack left one attendee dead and 2 others critically injured. Law enforcement discovered explosives and additional weapons in Crooks's vehicle and home, suggesting he may have planned a larger-scale attack. The FBI investigated the incident as an act of domestic terrorism and an assassination attempt. Crooks's motive remains unclear, though evidence suggested he had been researching Trump's rallies and other high-profile events. September 15, 2024, Florida golf course incident. Trump survived another assassination attempt while golfing at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. The suspect, Ryan Wesley Ralph, was armed with a semi-automatic rifle and was hiding in shrubbery near the course. Secret Service agents spotted Ralph before he could fire and opened fire on him. Ralph fled but was captured shortly after. No injuries were reported. Investigations revealed that Ralph had been stalking Trump for weeks and had compiled a list of potential targets. He was charged with attempting to assassinate a presidential candidate and other federal crimes. October 2024, foiled attempt in California. Law enforcement likely prevented a third assassination attempt during a campaign rally in Coachella, California. A suspect, Vem Miller, was apprehended at a security checkpoint with unregistered firearms, high-capacity magazines, and fake identification. Authorities believe Miller intended to harm Trump, but were able to intervene before any violence occurred. Miller was charged with firearm-related offenses. Broader context. These attempts underscored the heightened risks faced by political candidates during the deeply polarized election cycle. Domestic violent extremist DVs, often motivated by conspiracy theories or political grievances, were identified as significant threats by U.S. intelligence agencies throughout the election period. The attacks raised concerns about campaign security and prompted calls for enhanced protective measures for candidates. These incidents reflect the volatile political climate of the 2024 election and the ongoing challenges in ensuring the safety of public figures in such a charged environment. Story 5. The Hanging Chads Controversy of 2000. The Hanging Chads controversy during the 2000 U.S. presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore became one of the most infamous electoral disputes in American history. It centered on voting irregularities in Florida, a state whose results ultimately decided the presidency. Below are the key details. What are hanging chads? The controversy arose from punch card ballots used in Florida. Voters were required to punch holes next to their chosen candidate's name, but in many cases, the perforated pieces of paper, called chads, did not fully detach. These incomplete punches led to hanging chads. Partially detached, dimpled chads, indented but not punched through, and pregnant chads, bulging but unpunched, creating ambiguity about voter intent. The Florida recount. On election night, November 7, 2000, the vote count in Florida was extremely close, with Bush leading Gore by just a few hundred votes out of nearly 6 million cast. Florida law mandated an automatic machine recount due to the narrow margin. After the machine recount, Bush's lead shrank to just 327 votes. Gore's campaign requested manual recounts in 4 Democratic-leaning counties, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and Volusia, where issues with punch card ballots were most prevalent. Legal battles. Disputes over how to handle the recounts quickly escalated into a legal battle. Key issues included whether manual recounts should proceed, how to interpret ballots with hanging or dimpled chads, the deadline for certifying Florida's results. The Florida Supreme Court ruled in favor of continuing the manual recounts, but the Bush campaign appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Bush versus Gore decision. On December 12, 2000, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a controversial 5-4 decision in Bush versus Gore, effectively halting the manual recounts on the grounds that they violated the Equal Protection Clause due to inconsistent standards across counties. This decision left Bush with a certified lead of just 537 votes in Florida, securing him the state's 25 electoral votes and the presidency. Fallout and legacy. The controversy left many Americans questioning the integrity of the electoral process and highlighted flaws in voting technology and procedures. It led to widespread reforms, including the replacement of punch card voting systems with electronic or optical scan systems, the passage of the Help America Vote Act, HAVA, in 2002, which provided federal funding for modernizing voting equipment and improving election administration. The episode remains a defining moment in U.S. political history, symbolizing both the fragility of democratic processes and the importance of clear electoral rules. The hanging chads controversy not only determined the outcome of a presidential election, but also reshaped how Americans think about voting systems and electoral fairness. So, that's the end of all 5 true stories regarding USA presidential elections that shocked the entire nation and the globe as well. What do you think about these events? Let us know your opinion in the comments box, and don't forget to subscribe to Horror Vault to continue watching such interesting true stories regularly. I will see you in the next video.